How y'all doing?
Welcome to our first live show with one of our new live shows called Sit Down with the Author. And the first author that we are sitting down with is my dad, Mr. Deacon Wally Calabrese. It's really weird saying that. Throughout the show, I'm just going to say Dad.
I'm going to say
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. That's good.
So today, or tonight,
That wasn't me. That was mine.
So tonight we're going to be talking about his book, The Apostles and Me, the 12, well, really 15 ordinary men and one extraordinary lady. You can find this on Amazon. Where else can you find it, Dad?
Anywhere online. You can also go to bookshop from Book Baby, but any online retailer.
Yes. So to get started, hello everyone. Hi Pam. Hi Louise. Dad, how about you tell everyone a little bit about yourself first before we go into the book?
What do you want to know?
Just
okay.
Yeah. I already know everything about you, Dad. So to anyone that may not.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Utica. Well, not born and raised, but whatever. Utica, Michigan is where I grew up. I joined the Marine Corps in 1987. Left the Marine Corps, retired in the Marine Corps in 2007. I married this awesome woman from the Philippines in 1992. We were blessed with two beautiful daughters who married two Marines. You'd think they would have known better, but they did anyways. But I love my son-in-laws just as much as if they were my own sons, so that's good. I'm a dean at the community college at the extended campus. So that's what I do. That's me. Yes.
And he's also
you
the
completely
deacon.
forgot the what ties it all into this video.
Oh yeah. I'm also a deacon in the Catholic Church, and I wrote the book. The for me. This is good for me. I'm not used to doing this.
How long have you been a deacon?
9 years.
Yeah.
26, as a matter of fact.
I think I was still in high school. When you got ordained. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure. Saying that was 9 years ago.
Yes. So, our first question is: can you tell us what your book is about? Just briefly.
The book itself it's taking a look at the apostles. A lot of people, it doesn't matter what faith you're in. I always heard about the apostles. They can recite the apostles' names, and that's all great. It's just like chocolate cake. That's wonderful. But they don't know the apostles, and were the apostles ordinary men, or were these extraordinary people that are so far distanced that they're like folklore or fantasy? They're like Spider-Man and Batman. Are they just regular people? And for me, it was interesting to get to actually know them deeper. That was part of the journey, was to actually, did they make mistakes? Did they screw up? Did they have doubts? Did they have fears? I mean, we hear part of it in the gospel when Jesus appears to two of the disciples who lived with him for 3 years and walked with him, dined with him. And they had no idea who he was until he broke bread. How's that possible? And then how do I correlate my mistakes? And am I that unworthy that I can't make it to heaven? Or are these just opportunities for an extraordinary moment? And I think that's what really led to this topic with the book, The Apostles and Me, which is interesting. If you look at the cover, that's why there's a silhouette, not my picture. So you can substitute, you can put yourself there where that silhouette's at.
He's talking about this right here. So this can be anyone. This isn't specifically my dad, but it can be anyone. And I really did enjoy that there are the apostles right there, kind of, in my eyes, like in support of us.
And see, when I look at this cover, I think of, because the apostles are all looking, and what I think of is they would be looking toward Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, it kind of is a symbol for us all having a part of Jesus in us.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
So I guess you pretty much already answered one of the other questions that we're going to ask is, why write about the apostles and why make them relatable? So, from what my understanding is that we know the names of the apostles, but we don't really know much about them.
Mhm.
And what made you to decide to make them so relatable to us as ordinary people? Because one of the things that you've done in your book is use your own experience and relate it to each apostle that you talk about in the book, which
Mhm.
was cool. So, what made you decide to make them that relatable?
Well, I didn't make them that relatable. That's who they are, and that's the beauty of the book is because we hardly ever, and I'm guilty of it. When my homilies come up, I don't really talk about Paul being, what is a Pharisee? Really? Do you even know what a Pharisee is until you sit down and read about him? You just hear this word Pharisee, and then everyone goes, oh, okay.
Some really important person.
Yeah, they don't really understand what a Pharisee is, or Peter. God love him. I mean, always had the right answers, but I always said it's at the wrong time too. I always thought that, even I thought, oh, okay, I'll talk about him denying him 3 times, but everybody's heard that that he's denying 3 times. And that's great. I think we all denied Jesus at least once or twice in our life. But then, what other opportunities were there to learn from Peter? What other opportunities were there to learn from Matthew? How can I relate to these individuals? Because Jesus chose them. Why did Jesus choose these 12? Why did Jesus choose Judas if he knew Judas was going to do that to him? What was the
Yeah.
purpose? What did I learn? And oddly enough, can I be like Judas? Yeah, my younger, dumber days, definitely.
Oh yeah, I can see those moments.
I know that was definitely one of the big topics is if or one of the big arguments if Jesus knew that Judas would betray him, why pick him in the first place, that kind of thing. So
It was necessary.
mhm.
It was what had to be done.
Necessary for us too, so we can learn from that.
Well, but without Judas, we wouldn't have the bridge to God in that aspect.
He was definitely needed. There's no doubt about that. But without Jesus, there'd be no bridge to God.
Yeah,
Cross.
I mean, with that, it wouldn't have. He would have probably still wound up on the cross, but I can't see a way that it would work without Judas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the catalyst
There you
for
go.
that whole event.
Just really quickly before we go into our next question, if anyone that's watching has any questions, if you'd like to know anything about this book, please feel free to ask them in the live chat. My dad will be more than happy to answer them for you. And even any questions about the Catholic faith in general, if there's something about it that you're curious about. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So another question that we'd like to ask is, what do you hope your readers gain from your book?
First and foremost, realize how extraordinary they are, even in our inadequacies or what we seem to be our weaknesses, our faults, because we tend to dwell on that the most. Oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Okay, great. Now, did you learn from it? Think about when you and Lisa were growing up. I never blow a gasket if you earned a C or a D. If that's what you earned, that's what you earned. But what did you learn from it? And then you guys always surpassed the expectations, right? And the idea is even in life, okay, that's what Jesus wants. You're going to make mistakes. We're all going to fall down. We're all going to stumble. But do we understand how to recoup from that? Do we understand how to make it better? Or do we just go through the motions and we hope like hell that, oh, I get to go to heaven because I believe in Jesus? Well, no, it's a lot more than that.
Right.
James, I mean, I talk about this in James. I mean, he really talks about how you have to work at this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gives 3 great examples in there. If you jump over to James, you'll see the 3 points that I really highlight. There's more, but I just highlight those 3. And that's the other thing about the book. It's not designed to be this incredibly long read in this theological discourse. That's not the point of it. I mean, my degree is in pastoral theology. The idea is to how do we relate, and how do we change our lives, and how do we make our lives more I don't know, I've just lost a word. How do we become more like Jesus?
Right.
That's what we're called to do, to be more like Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely didn't get that. And I stressed that in one of our recent videos if anyone watches our videos that's watching, I have talked about my dad's book a couple of times, and I definitely stressed that this wasn't in the way that you've written, wasn't in any lecture type of way. It wasn't like you were sitting in a class being taught endlessly and in a monotone. That's like one of the biggest things that turns people off from these kind of books, is that the tone is so monotone to them.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
wanted to have
like,
more of a conversation. Like I'm
right.
sitting with you and having a conversation with you. That was the idea.
That's exactly how it felt. It's just having a conversation with you. And then also seeing you, the author, relate your personal experiences in this book. And I feel like that will enable the reader to relate to you as well, along with the apostles that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's not like a big part of the book, but I know in this book you have mentioned some topics that are definitely controversial in today's society. And when you were writing about those certain topics, did you expect any backlash when releasing this book?
I was a little, you can say I was a little hesitant when I had the book reviewed, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's there, your mouth's looking. So there is a point in there where I talk about transgenderism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people who reviewed the book, I have no idea who they are. And how originally I felt like, okay, well, they're going to look at it and they'll be upset because of the way I explain transgenderism or the LGBTQ plus society. And here's the deal: whatever faith you're in, and I want to stress that again, whatever faith you're in has rules,
Mm-hmm.
right? Has laws, and those rules and laws, if you are going to abide by that faith that you profess to be true, you're going to follow them. Okay, and the idea is not to slander the person. The idea is not to hurt the person. The idea is not to belittle the person. The idea is none of that. That is what's taken out of context so much is they feel like, oh, you're just belittling me because this is the way I am. No, that's not true at all. We all have to agree that there's right and there's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basics right there. Do you believe and do you accept that there's right and there's wrong? There is correct and there's incorrect. There is moral and there's immoral. And if there's not, like I wrote in the book, it's all a joke. It's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is right and there's wrong. There is moral and immoral. And we can't keep stretching this line so thin and thin and thin where everybody's right because everybody's not right. There's times that, we make mistakes. But that doesn't mean we stop loving that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Right.
love the person, not the sin. And the same goes true, there's a yeah, there's a out there. God love him. He was out there and he's saying that we're being intrinsically rude and harsh on the LGBTQ society, and the Catholic Church has it wrong and whatnot. And we're not holding the same standards to other people who are not living the way that they're supposed to be living, meaning the divorced and remarried, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not true. I mean, we don't have a bunch of people running around saying, "Look, I'm divorced and remarried." It's not happening. So we don't know who it is. And ultimately, what it comes down to is what's happening in that person's heart. If they're trying to manipulate the law to best suit them, then they're missing the point. Because Jesus came, everybody's heard this, right? He
Mm-hmm.
didn't come to abolish the law. He came to,
Fulfill it.
yeah. And I also put this in the book: strive for the narrow gate. Many will try, few will enter. So there's lots of hints that Jesus tells us that not everybody's going to heaven, and people don't want to talk about that, right? Everybody can, but that free will kicks them in the butt, and they're not, and not everybody's going to be able to go, unfortunately, because they're going to choose poorly. Not to sound too cliche.
And the way that you bring up those kind of topics, it definitely was. It was done in a very respectful way. Like you said, it wasn't meant to bash anyone, but you explained very well why the Catholic Church believes in certain aspects and
Mhm.
why it won't change. And I thought that was personally very well done. I if anybody, all you that are watching, I have my happy tabs here, and
I put my glasses on. I can't see.
my dad is blind. I have these tabs here, and because I'm horrible at talking about our Catholic faith, and I know he's actually better than it, and he's a convert. So
sometimes I have to put a lot of thought into things.
Huh?
Sometimes I have to put a lot of thought into things.
Well, you did ask a lot of good questions there in RCIA.
Yes.
My whole goal in RCIA was to stump you.
I think you came close once or twice.
Did you learn anything while writing this book? During your research and self-examination and looking at the apostles, was there anything that really was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that? Or maybe something that you knew it, but it just kind of refreshed it in your mind?
Well, I mean, if you talk about the self-examination, heck, the book's all about my mistakes, right? So there's a lot of
there's a lot of
but I've also learned from those mistakes, okay? And I never claimed to be a saint, and I'm trying to be one, but I never claimed to be one. I always talk about the success of our kids is always because of their mother and her example, with how she set the tone for prayer and whatnot. I talk about that, how I yearn to have a prayer life like hers. Hers is, I think, much stronger than mine. But more importantly, getting to know the apostles, yeah, it was very personal. Heck, when you think about Peter and what Clement of Alexandria talked about when his wife was being let out to be executed.
Yes, I had no idea that Peter was married and had children. And when you mentioned that he was actually joyful about his wife going to her execution, my first thought was, is he crazy? Because if I saw him get ready to get his head chopped off or maybe crucified, I'd be mortified and angry, and I would not be, oh, so happy for you.
Now, I'm sure he was mortified and angry, but he was also understanding of the fact that it was God's will.
Right, I understand that, but that's still hard. The human aspect of it, and then.
Well, think of St. Lawrence, the great deacon, right? St. Lawrence. He was being burned alive, and he says, "Turn me over. That side's done." Right?
Oh.
So to have the courage to say something like that, and there's no real definitive church teaching on this, whether or not Peter's wife was actually. A lot of scholars say that his wife was already dead before he met Jesus, because his mother-in-law. And I read about that in the book. But anyways, I'm digressing. My point on that is just like I wrote in the book is, okay, so somehow, some way, Clement of Alexandria heard this and found it to be very important. Now go examine all the lives of the saints who were martyred. None of them went, son of a beep, and add in any other thing you want to. None of them said that. They're all joyful. All of them. Why were they joyful? Because they know this isn't the end. Our time here is very limited. What we do with our time, how we live our lives, that's important. We can make a difference, and we learn from these men. Those 15 that I wrote about, we can learn from them. Those should be our role models. Those should be our superheroes. Don't get me wrong. Iron Man, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, all great. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's good. That's fantasy. This is real. And we're talking about eternity. Whether people believe in that or not, we still have an obligation to talk about eternity. And how do we get there? These are the two choices, right? Eternity in heaven or eternity in hell. That's it. There's no gray area. Which one do we want? And by using these guys as the example, using Mary as the example, then I could probably I don't know if I would have the courage to say that or not. Rejoice, you're going home. I don't think I could say that.
Knowing you, Dad?
No. I don't think I think the gunny me probably would come out, and then I'd be like, shouldn't have said that. You know, I think I just cussed. Oh well.
It's fine.
It's fine. This channel's not monetized or anything like that. Go ahead and
you're also
say
a
what you gotta
retired
say.
gunny. No, I mean, y'all know Catholics do drink, so I mean, there's some swearing in there everywhere. So I can't talk. So speaking of Mary, because I just gotta say this, because that's always been one of my pet peeves. Okay, no disrespect, but a lot of people assume that we worship Mary now, and I'm so happy that. Just like the biggest pet peeve. I'm sorry.
We do have a question.
Okay.
In your perspective, where is the fine line where you are simply expressing what is best for the person and doing out of love versus being hateful and disrespectful or judgmental?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, he's from the Philippines.
That's an excellent question. I like that question. So, how can you give me an example? What topic are you talking about? Because that would help out a little bit better, if that would be possible. If there would be like a specific area, I mean, I'm gonna try to generalize it. Okay, so how do we respond respectfully? Okay, you don't take the Bible and beat somebody over the head with it because not everybody believes in the Bible.
Mm-mm.
And that's fine. You know, that's their choice. There's certain actions which are right, and there's certain actions that are wrong. Now, it depends on the situation, right? So I don't know what situation you're talking about. It could be anything. It could be the abortion topic. It could be LGBTQ plus society. Whatever. It could be divorced and remarried. It could be I don't know. Pick a topic. You guys pick a topic. What topic you want to talk?
Well, on that,
divorce, premarital sex.
He said,
okay.
Example thoughts on same-sex divorce, premarital sex.
Ooh, all three of them are good topics.
Way to go, Louise.
Oh, they're good. They're good topics. I like that. So same sex. Okay. In your opinion, let's start off that way. Because even when I teach ethics, so it's gonna be one of those things. So when I teach ethics, I had to play both sides of the fence. I had to show both examples, right? For and against. Okay, so nobody knows what side I'm on, which is good. That's what they're paying me for. But here's a little bit different. Okay, so let's talk about same-sex relationships. Inherently, does it make sense biologically? Take faith out of the question, out of the scenario, for example. Does it make sense biologically for two males or two females to be in a relationship? In other words, people always revert to this argument that, well, in the animal kingdom, it happens all the time. Well, also in the animal kingdom, the males beat the hell out of each other to figure out who's going to mate with females. And one male usually ends up dead. And then that male's got to protect those females in his line from here on out. Pick an animal species, and that's normally how it is. There are some species, for example, where the male and the female mate for life. Okay, so you still have that anomaly that we have to consider. Why is it that there are some species in the animal kingdom where a male and a female will mate for life and with no one else, and that spouse or that mate dies, they don't ever meet up with anybody else? Interesting question. Nobody ever talks about that part. They want to focus more on the fact that the behavior, and that's all it is a behavior of acting out in a lustful, not respectful, lustful way. Because there is a difference between love and lust. So when we think about that, and we think about the fact that if I was to engage somebody and have that conversation, and that's exactly what it would be, is a conversation between why I think same-sex relationships are not correct, is because of the fact that it's not designed that way. Okay. And you have to think about, because you even brought it up, premarital sex. Okay, so we're all adults here. If there's anyone under the age of 18, there's a disclaimer. I'm gonna talk about it. So there's your disclaimer. So you have vaginal sex, you have oral sex, you have anal sex, you have hand sex, you have toy sex, you have all these different ways of sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have two males, it sort of narrows it down to two, right? Oral or hand, okay, oral, hand, and anal. Now, just for a moment, just think about this. Take the faith out. Just think about this biologically. Anal sex, what's the primary purpose for your rectum?
Disposal.
How are the muscles designed?
To hold things in.
Right? So you're actually going against something. You're actually forcing a muscle to do something it's not designed to do. And it causes bodily harm. And oddly enough, the person could get seriously sick and or die, right? Okay. Now, when we think about natural, which is a man and a woman, okay, and this is something that guys don't think about a lot of times. What happens when a woman allows you, the man, to enter her? You
Are you
literally,
talking about the first time?
I'm just saying in general, if you think about it, a woman allows a man to literally enter her.
Oh, okay.
Literally.
Yeah.
Right? Guys don't normally think about that. Ooh, it was fun. All 15 seconds. And I think that was like everything. But when there's this unique bond, there's this unique function, right? And when we place that into this concept, yes, it's reproductive. It is pleasurable. It is enjoyable. I'm not dismissing it at all. But what I'm saying is the purpose of it is reproductive, first and foremost. If it wasn't, then how would we reproduce? How do we sustain ourselves? So they can't diminish that aspect of it. Well, there's adoption. I understand that. There's other couples who they try often and they just can't, and so they have to adopt. I get it.
And there are couples that don't want kids.
Huh?
Then there are couples that don't want kids.
Right. And, or they kill the life of a child. And we can talk about abortion, later on too. But I thought we were going to focus more on the book, but I want to answer these questions here. So when we think about the fact that the homosexual community, and that's what it is, we're not dismissing the fact that they're made in the image and likeness of God. We're dismissing the fact of how they choose to live and the behavior that they're enacting. That's what we're dismissing, not the fact that they're a unique individual. We still love them. We still
Respect
want to have that yearning relationship with them, right? But we don't have to agree because we feel that particular act is immoral. Whether it's man on man, girl on girl, doesn't matter. It's immoral. When you're talking about divorce, Catholics believe, Christians, believe it or not, most Christians believe in one marriage. Okay. One marriage, and my wife just said something there. She says making love is different than sex, which is true. It is. When we believe in one marriage, so that marriage is sanctified. It is special. So we believe in that one marriage. We believe that it's a sacrament that was established by Christ. And without that marriage, right, without that sacrament, then there's nothing holding it together. And if you think about this, I'm not making this up, and I don't have the numbers, so I'm usually not the one to do this. I'm going to do it anyways. Look it up. Look up the statistics on the divorce rate between now and say 50 years ago. And some are going to argue, well, 50 years ago, the laws were stricter. Not so much. The way we lived was different 50 years ago versus how we live today. And I think part of that problem is because we're more individual versus communal. I think society is more hooked on these wonderful gadgets than they are on the person sitting next to them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then premarital sex, well, and again, we believe, sometimes on the pot calling the kettle black, we believe that sex or making love, if you want to be specific, is a unique and wonderful experience between a man and a woman, and it should be treasured. It should be something that is a gift from the spouses to each other. It should be a unique gift for the spouses for each other. If not, it. Actually, I had somebody say this in class. I can't believe this. She actually believed it's like going on a test drive. I gotta go test drive all these vehicles, so why can't I test drive all these guys? And I thought, okay, that's interesting. That's different. I haven't heard that before, but okay. But she couldn't back it up other than the fact she's using these cliches, right? So when we think about these concepts and then examples of how to talk about it, if I come across abrupt or rude or slamming the Bible on you, of course you're going to shut down. You don't want nothing to do with me, right? You're going to say that I'm just using a book that you don't believe in, which might be true. But the idea is, how am I compassionate with you to understand where you're coming from, meet you where you're at, and have you understand where I'm coming from, and you meet me where I'm at. And then we can have that discourse and we can talk to each other. And that's the problem today. People don't want to talk. right? They don't want to have that conversation. They just would rather point the fingers and yell at each other and saying, well, you're wrong, I'm right. And that doesn't solve anything. And that's why I think people get a bad feeling whenever somebody brings up faith and says, well, this is what I believe.
Lisa actually says, so would you say that those who don't believe in Catholicism don't have love in their relationship that lasts? For clarification purposes. I don't know if you could see Lisa's comment.
Actually, the thing popped back up. No, I wouldn't say that. I believe Christians, we all share in Vatican II. I don't know how we got on this because this has nothing to do with the apostles and me, but this is interesting.
I think because I mentioned that you briefly in the book discuss those kinds of topics. Briefly, it's not majority of the book, but you use them.
No, this is good. I mean, I'm fine. I'm great. This is good. I'm enjoying this. So, would you say that those who don't believe in Catholicism don't have love in a relationship? No, I wouldn't say that. We believe, okay, as Catholics, that we have the fullness of faith, right? So, if we had a circle here, we have the fullness of faith. But here's a clarification from Vatican II. We also believe from Vatican II that that's a council that the bishops and the cardinals under the Pope came together and they talked about some of these things. And one of the things they said is that, a lot of people are on the path. Okay. So they have an understanding. So we have the full pie. They have slivers of the pie. Okay. And Lisa, you're probably too young to remember this, but when we were stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, there was a great Monsignor down there, Monsignor Madden, and I'll never forget what he said. And whenever he had anything important to say in his homily, he always put up his fingers like this. And everybody would lean forward. You remember because you're putting your head back. So
Yes.
lean forward. And Monsignor said this, if, that's a big word, if I get to heaven, I'm going to be surprised who's there and who's not.
Yeah.
We can't say who God loves and who God doesn't love. And as I prefaced before, Christians, Jews, Muslims, if they are abiding by their laws and their religion, right? As a Catholic, I abide by the laws of my faith. I abide by what my faith teaches. I believe in what my faith teaches. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be in this faith. I wouldn't be an ordained deacon in this faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm in this faith, because I believe it. I believe in what it teaches. I believe in what Catholicism stands for. I believe in the fact that Jesus established this church, and upon Peter, who is the rock of this faith. That's what I believe. And our faith teaches us that for this love to last, it has to be sacramental. That is not to diminish what other faiths believe. That is not to diminish what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, from our perspective, that's what we believe. It's a sacrament established by Christ. It's a sacrament that's needed in order for us to thrive. So to answer your question, I guess I was a long-winded way of saying it, Lisa. I believe that there is love in other people's relationships, even outside of Catholicism. But I believe Catholicism is the fullness of faith. And then the next question is, so in terms of expressing those thoughts, how do you think we can say that it is coming out of respect? What I just noticed when someone expresses something that leans to
Conservativity.
Okay, so being conservative, they get backlash. Nowadays, a lot of people who are conservative get backlash. There's no doubt about it. If you consider yourself to be conservative, you just
you gotta have thick skin.
Yeah,
it's like I mentioned in our recent video, the BookTube Real Talk tag. We're conservative, but we don't talk about it very much because of the backlash that conservatives are getting now, and I'd rather just not deal with that.
So actually, on that note, the divorce rate is actually at a 40-year low. But I also think that has to do with the fact of there's less people getting married now.
There's more people living together.
Yeah, more people just live together. And I think that kind of diminishes it, because when you just live with, I think just living, and this is just me, I haven't done any studies, I don't read articles on it, this is just what I've seen. When you just live with someone, and this isn't Catholic or anything, this is just as a couple, a married couple. When you just live with someone, you don't have what a married couple has, in the fact of that other person can walk away at any time. And yeah, it might mess up the routine a little bit, or it might get some bills or anything like that, there's nothing that's holding them there.
Mhm.
I married Lori with the purpose of spending the rest of my life with her. But if something were to happen and we weren't married, I'd be like, well, you did this the wrong way. You know what? You burned those pork chops. I can't do that anymore. But when you take that step as a married person, you are making that commitment and making that declaration that you're going to spend the absolute rest of your life with that person. And I think that's the difference between a couple that's just living together and a couple that's married.
There's this beautiful thing. I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a beautiful thing. The word begins with a C. Covenant. Right? You're not making just an agreement. You're making a covenant. You're making an everlasting promise at the altar of God. Right? Saying, and think about this. When you guys, and I wish I would have known because I would have done this. When you guys walked down the aisle, Lori, who walked you down the aisle?
Thomas.
Who walked Lisa down the aisle?
Kevin.
Right? It wasn't dear old dad. You walked into the church, right? You walked in together. Thomas had you on his arm saying, "This is who I choose to be my bride." And you were saying, "This is who I choose to be my groom." Forever. That's what you guys said. And you walked in together through the waters of baptisms to the foot of the altar and expressed your vows in front of God. And when we put it into that context and we think about that, and we think about that covenant was just made, right? And that joy that comes from that, and having God bless that marriage, that's awesome. There should be excitement. There should be joy. It should be, even when you guys exited, right? So Thomas was on our side and you were on his side. So the families were welcoming the other child into their family. All these symbols that we use, but they're powerful, right? So that way they can see the sense of communal, the sense of family, right? Bringing us together, which, believe it or not, you can tie back to my book.
Yes, it does.
So Lori brought up a good point. So, and this is just going to be me playing a little bit of devil's advocate. When I first heard of Catholics, I did think that you guys had an odd relationship with
You?
I had a lot of views.
Hold on. I'm the one that was always had the pet peeve about people thinking that, again, no disrespect to anyone that assumes. I understand. But I mean, I just gotta.
Just as somebody that was looking from the outside in, or even not even just Mary, but even the saints.
He even in his book, this is the last chapter, my favorite chapter.
They can't see it.
You can't see, but I have something highlighted. It was annotated. I'm probably going to spoil it for you. That is okay. All right, here. And this is my dad saying, "I think it's imperative to begin with this." And this next sentence is all caps, okay? "Mary is not the fourth person of the Blessed Trinity, and we do not worship Mary." And I highlighted that, and I said, "Thank you," because. And my favorite. Hold on. You say, "I know, I'm yelling, I'm sorry." Actually, no, I'm not. So you can see that there's some sense of humor in my dad's book as well. He does have a sense of humor. "I get so frustrated and compelled to raise my voice every time someone, including some Catholics, says, or worse yet, actually believes that Catholics worship Mary." Bold. Favorite sentence ever. And I really appreciated that you added that in there and explained why we do not worship Mary but honor her, and you actually go into that, and why you actually included her in your book as well, and why we should also look up to her. So I thought that was. I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
No, that's good. I mean, she's the apostle par excellence. When you think about it.
Say that again.
She's the apostle par excellence, meaning she's the perfect example of what it means for all of us, male and female. We all should emulate what Mary did. and how she lived.
Well, yeah, she threw everything to God.
Speaking of, Luis has another comment. He says, I saw a comment on Facebook page, Mary will heal a person. Any thoughts?
Can I field this one? Because
Sure.
it kind of ties into my, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you know a hell of a lot more than I do. On that aspect. I don't want your head to go.
Oh, in general.
So I think that she has the, when we pray, when we pray to God and pray to Jesus and the Holy Spirit, we are speaking to them. It's the same. That's how I look at it, as we don't pray to Mary or we don't pray to the saints. We are specifically asking, speaking to them, asking them to go to God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit or the Blessed Trinity to speak to them on our behalf, because they're there. They did what they had to do to get there. And so I don't think that Mary can heal a person, but she could definitely go, hey boy, we need to sit down and have a little conversation. And
She's the perfect, I think, mediator, I guess.
All right, so when we pray the rosary, let's just start off with that. When we pray the rosary, it's all scriptural. And it all comes right out of the Bible. So when people say, where do you get the rosary from? It comes right out of the Bible. Hail, full of grace. Hail, favored one. Same thing. So it all comes out of the Bible. Secondly, she's the only person ever to be addressed that way in the Bible. No one else has ever been addressed that way. Hail, favored one. Hail, full of grace. No one.
blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit.
Yeah, that's literally what Elizabeth said to her.
Yeah. So yeah, it's in Luke. So when we think about this, so when somebody says that Mary healed me, they're missing the point. Mary prayed that her son would heal him.
Ah, that makes sense.
So Mary is like an intercessor. What we do is we ask Mary to intercede on our behalf. We ask Mary, please pray for us. We do that when we pray the rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now at the hour of our death. So we are asking her to pray for us. We do ask the saints to intercede on our behalf, right? So they're already in the fullness. They have God in front of them. They're there. They're where we want to be. So they're asking God, in your infinite wisdom, in your will, in your desire, if this should happen, allow it to happen. But his will be done, not my will be done. So we're asking and we're pleading for their behalf. It's just like if I ask somebody, oh, hey, Thomas and Lori are expecting their third child. Please keep them in your prayers. It's the same concept, right? We're asking people to pray for you for your safety, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing when we're asking the saints, or if we're asking Mary to intercede on our behalf. We're asking her to go to her son, who happens to be, I don't know, God, and say, hey, if you think this should happen, allow it to happen, right? I even talk about that with his first miracle. What happened with his first miracle?
He turned
that was the wedding
wine.
at Cana, right?
He turned the water into wine.
But who sort of initiated that?
Mary.
First intercession. That was the first intercessionary prayer. Do whatever he says. Crazy, huh?
Oh yeah.
We ask for intercessions. That's right, Pam. That's what we do.
I said that. I had a conversation about that. I got it right. Who, if you had to pick one of the apostles?
I think Dad mentioned who his favorite apostle was.
For those who haven't read the book yet.
Okay, sorry.
Who and why?
John.
Would it be Apostle John?
I just sorry. I was just at his chapter before he took the book. Hold on. What chapter was it?
There's a thing called an index.
It is an index. Right. Okay. John, where are you? John and me. Page 31. It was I did a lot of underlining, Dad. It's crazy. So one of the things that I think you mentioned that you relate well to John was how direct he was.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing that you said in your book was, I've been accused by some as being, well, direct would be putting it nicely. I had to underline that and say on the side, I never would have guessed because you are very direct and sometimes blunt.
Yeah, I got to work on the bluntness. I got to be a little bit more compassionate and pastoral.
But I think this was probably my favorite chapter because I do feel like you definitely can relate to John the most in that aspect. I just see a lot of John in you after reading this chapter.
I actually relate John to a young Lance Corporal too, who's always trying to do better than this. But anyways, I digress.
Oh,
You didn't highlight that part. But no, I like John. In fact, if you right after go to I forget what page it's on. Open up your book. Yeah, you're there. Go to that first quote I use of him. It should be
the very first page.
no,
Huh?
no, not the first page. If you say that it's in where the first time I said that he's direct and it's not hurtful. Please. I don't have. I'd like know if you think I'd have a book, but I don't have one.
You would think so. Looks like I came prepared.
You think I'd remember it too?
Well, it took someone so long to read it.
Hold on.
This
Oh,
is
wait.
true.
Was it this one?
There are people that say that they know him, but they do not keep his commands. They are lying.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You see it?
Whoever says, I know him, but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. You followed up with, well, dang, there it is. A statement that I must be reminded of daily.
Mm-hmm. It's unique, right?
Yes.
And what commands is he telling us to follow? Ooh, you weren't expecting that, right? I gave you a question and I actually put it in the book.
Ah.
Yeah, you went too far. It's like right after that, I write about it. You have to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and you have to love your neighbor as yourself.
See, I was thinking that, but I wasn't sure if that was the right answer.
Yeah, that's it. And let's be honest, it's a pain in the beep, right? It really is. There are people that, and I write this in my book, that stretch every ounce of Christian charity that I have to the very limits. And then Christian charity just goes out the window and just turn back to being Gunny Calabrese.
Yeah, that happens to me every time I leave Mass. Something I'm working on.
All
I
right.
can't leave Mass without cussing at traffic.
So I'm working. Well, I'm not that bad anymore. I used to be, but my point is there are always going to be times when I don't see Jesus in everybody, right? There's times that I want to revert to the old me because I think it's
Easier.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's a lot easier. Ignorance is bliss comes to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't know, I can't be held responsible. But here's the deal: I do know, so I am responsible. You guys know, so you are responsible.
Yes, that's definitely a heavy weight to have on your shoulders during.
Right. So it goes back to what John just said. Those that say that they know him but don't keep his commandments. He doesn't mince words. He's not being rude. He's not being inconsiderate. He's just saying the facts. If you say you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the second person of the Trinity, and you don't follow his commandments, but yet you go, "Oh, I love Jesus," there's no other way of saying it.
Yeah.
But if I say that to somebody, not good. Not good. But it's the truth. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have a responsibility. We all have that obligation. And that's why it goes back to this book. And that's why I wanted to write this book, was to spend time on these apostles and say, hey, have I screwed up? Well, Lori, you can answer that more often than not, right?
I'm not going to answer that question. No, he is not screwed up.
I have. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. Yeah. As a dad, I was not a perfect dad. I made my fair share of mistakes. As a husband, I made my fair share of mistakes. As a son, I've made my fair share of mistakes. Can't believe I just said that. My mom's watching.
I bet your grandma's watching right now.
Right? So we all make mistakes, but the difference is if we don't recognize A, that was a mistake. B, how do I change that mistake, that behavior? Right?
Mhm.
You have to work on it. If you don't work on it, then that's the problem. You have to make a difference. You have to try to change. If you're not willing to make that change, then you got issues, big time issues. It's not me saying that. That's John saying that.
It's completely understandable. It's one of the things I struggle with confession or reconciliation.
Oh, the hot box.
Is,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I like to do it face to
You
face.
actually said the hot box in this book.
I did actually say the hot box.
You did. It
So-
was hilarious.
I have a problem with whenever I leave mass. Perfect example. I say a lot of brutal things to a lot of people while I'm driving, and just a little bit. And
Little bit?
sometimes even when it comes to political discourse, any type of that type, sometimes I get really aggravated and really frustrated, and I say a lot of not Christian things. And I have a problem that sometimes I don't feel sorry about it. And I was raised that if you're not, when you say sorry, you're making a pact with that person not to do it again.
Yep.
Well, confession is the ultimate sorry. You're apologizing for your screw ups.
Well, here's the deal.
It's God.
Hold on.
Here's the deal. So you're saying confession, but the real word is what?
Reconciliation.
So what does reconciliation mean?
You're reconciling your mistakes.
Can you say it
And
without
with the person.
Huh?
And with the person. That's what you do is you reconcile.
Oh,
Oh, honey.
Oh, schmackadackle.
Wait, before we continue. So it was Dad talk. I hate this camera. Dad talks about reconciliation in his book briefly as well. And again, I'm just going to point out the humor you can find in this book. In this particular chapter, you were talking about how I think it was back in Florida, and you were going on this retreat, and you really didn't want to go. And you were thinking about lying to Mom, saying that you would go, or that you
we
did
get
go.
in a fight? Oh my gosh. We never told
Anyway,
you.
you were just like, it came time for the adoration. You said, adoration, what do? I knew I'd fall asleep and hoped I wouldn't start snoring. Relatable, anyone? And I'm saying this out of me because adoration was also a struggle for me to get through, especially as a kid, because kids can't sit still. During this time in adoration, there's another added bonus, the sacrament of reconciliation. Oh, good Lord, could this get any worse? I die. I think I laughed for a good solid 5 minutes because that is so relatable because so many Catholics I hate to use it, but they do despise reconciliation.
well, that's because
and
no one likes to
adoration.
admit they make mistakes.
Well, that and they don't want to go in front of a priest.
No.
Yes,
In front of a priest.
I enjoy reconciliation. I enjoy adoration. I enjoy praying in front of the host.
That's adoration.
Yeah, okay. When I think of adoration, we're sitting quietly and just listening to everything. But okay,
It's a nightmare with kids though. when they
I
don't sit
enjoy
still.
mass. I enjoy all these things. But when I'm in that moment, it's bliss. It's amazing. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
A half an hour later, life comes back. And all the
Before you go any further, I didn't mean to cut you off, but think about why is it so enjoyable? Where are you? You're in the presence
in
of
God's house.
You're in the presence of God.
Yeah.
Think about this for a second. And Vinny Flynn does an excellent job, and I recommend his book, The 7 Secrets of the Eucharist.
Hey, we still have to read that book. We have
I'm
it.
on chapter 3.
I know you guys get it for Christmas, and you guys haven't read it yet. Go figure.
I'm on chapter 3.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
I want to give it its
Hey
full
guys,
edition.
the 7 secrets. That it? No.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Eucharist.
7 Secrets of the Eucharist by Vinny Flynn. I highly recommend it. It's a short read. It's 2 hours, and I'm a slow reader. It took me 2 hours to read it. It's excellent reading.
He's
And the
like,
reason why I'm saying that, and Thomas can make all the faces he wants. The reason why I'm saying that is, think about this for a second. Jesus cannot split himself from his divinity, right? So when we receive him in the Eucharist,
That's my favorite part about that. You're receiving all 3.
all of heaven, everything. That is awesome.
I was on that page. Well, that's why I give so much. This book, like just getting on chapter 3. Sometimes, the whole ignorance is bliss. Sometimes I limit how much I know just so I can't be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do that, to be honest.
But it was this book that actually made it to where when for communion to mean so much to me. And it is a very important aspect that I'll go months without receiving communion because I haven't been able to go to reconciliation, whether it be due to work or family issues, or I'm just plain exhausted. And that's choosing selfish issues over actually doing my duty to God. So that book was something that I only got to chapter 3 because I was like, I can't think of how much more special of a gift that we could have gotten. And that might sound, I don't even know, or a cop out, but that was, I had to put it down. It was just, I don't know how much more I could take in that moment. I don't know how much more I was ready for at this moment.
Well, I recommend that you finish it. Right. The reason why I recommend you finish it is because it is a beautiful read, and it is beautiful how Vinny put it all together, and how he used Saint Faustina, and it was just beautiful. I mean, words can't words. I even use it in my homily. That's how much I enjoyed that book.
Did you? I can't remember. Did you mention the Eucharist in your book? I can't remember. I don't think you did, because I don't
remember. The next book, the book I'm writing right now, I mention it.
That was another question. There we go.
What are your plans for book number 2?
Yes,
living my Catholic faith and loving every minute of it.
Nice.
What is it with you long titles, Dad?
Yeah, I mean,
the
Apostles and Me would have been fine. 12. Well, really 15 ordinary and one extraordinary lady. Come on.
You didn't like that?
Now I feel bad every time I can't remember the little caption.
I like living my Catholic faith and loving every minute of it. Because I do. I love every minute of it, even though I make mistakes. It's okay. That's the thing. I mean, we're all going to make mistakes, but do we learn from them, right? And then how do we revert it back to those who Jesus taught? I mean, look at Judas. Can you relate to Judas?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I can probably relate to him better than any other apostle.
Yeah, my sense of humor came out good in that one.
Yes.
It did, but I'm sorry. That reconciliation one had me dying for 5 minutes straight. Pam, you need to read it. I know you said you didn't read it. You got to read it. You'll laugh and possibly cry. I cried a few times because,
well, it's because you're
Dad does this thing where he likes to pull up my heartstrings. I'm like, damn, I should really do better.
It's because you're sensitive and you're pregnant. When you finish this book when you're pregnant.
I'm just saying.
This is true.
So just before we have to wrap this up, because we are going on an hour, for your next book, can we expect you to kind of delve into that it's okay to have struggles in your faith? Like, I know that there's he's a Calabrese there, wordy. Yes. Because I know that there's Catholics that struggle with certain teachings of the Catholic Church and whatnot. Can we expect you to kind of go into that in the next book and why it's okay to have those struggles?
We're talking about book number 3. The Catholic, being Catholic and the struggles of being Catholic.
Ooh. Ooh. That's actually a good one.
That's a good title. That's a good title. I like that.
Before you forget.
I like that one.
I want a 10% cut of everything that you earn.
I haven't sold a whole lot of books, so 10%, I'll give you a dime. I mean, I think I've given you a dime already, but that's okay. Well, this book is oddly enough, it's living the sacramental life, right? So how do I live my faith? How do you live your faith? So it's going to be another one of those conversational type books, right? It's going to be a casual read, but with church teaching, right? We can't diminish the church teaching, because Holy Mother, this I want to stress over and over and over again, because people bring up pedophile cases and God help those poor kids that were abused. Here's the deal. Holy Mother Church is Holy Mother Church. The idiots inside it that screw it up, they're idiots, and they should be held accountable. And people get mad because I used the word idiot. I don't care. Anyone who hurts a child or a young man or a woman is a blooming idiot, and they need to be held accountable to all extents of the law. And whoever knew anything about this needs to be held accountable. Period.
Mhm.
That's a very fine line with me. I'm going to be a John here. I don't pull any punches on that. I'll revert to a gunny in a heartbeat and fill in the blanks after that, right? Bleep, bleep,
One of
bleep.
the things that would probably, I'm going to leave it at that. It would
Yeah.
it would be a very bad thing.
Yeah, we'll leave it like that. So, but Holy Mother Church herself is holy, right? She's the bride of Christ. So how do I live my faith? Well, part of it is the sacraments. The other part's the corporal works of mercy, spiritual works of mercy, right? So I'm going to talk about all that. And there's a couple other chapters in there, so I can't give everything away. You got to read the book. Thomas will read it, but Lori, I'm going to have to work
I'll
on
read
it.
it within a week.
Okay.
And Lisa.
At least
And
one
Lisa.
of your
Lisa's got to
daughters-
get past page 3.
At least one of your daughters read it. I'm not going to mention any name. Lisa, if you're still
I only have
watching.
2 daughters.
Yeah. So Lisa, at least I read it.
So on that note, we are above an hour, but
Lisa says
Jesus
that.
just
I had a
Read the
question.
book, Lisa.
Ma had a question of, in relationship to Christ, by writing this book, what did you struggle with the most? And then I have a question for that for the ending.
Ooh.
That's a good one. Read this book. What struggle the most? Struggle the most is I guess my biggest struggle is realizing that I'm chosen. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It was me.
because we're all chosen to
Yeah.
be exactly what you did in the book. I mean,
And I struggle with that sometimes because I know I'm not worthy. None of us are worthy. And I want to revert back to the old me where it's like, it is what it is, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want all that responsibility. But he chose me to have a unique relationship with him. And I'm in love with Christ, right? I know your mom loves God more than she loves me, which is okay. That's cool. I like that. That's important. And I'm getting to that point, right? And I think it's awesome that he did choose me. I get confused sometimes why he chose me because there are plenty of times Mom and I wanted to throw the towel and say, no, this isn't for us. We don't need to be doing this. But he did. He chose me. And that's probably the biggest struggle. And living up to that expectation, right? And then realizing it's okay that I make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes and don't make those mistakes again. And then how can I help somebody else get into that loving relationship with God?
and I think that's something that Christians all struggle with is we're chosen to evangelize.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we leave the mass,
Yeah. Go.
spread the gospel.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not easy.
No.
Especially in today's
Like
society.
Christian is not easy. No, it's not.
No. So for the last question, just to finish up, your writing style was one of the most unique, and I'm not a big
Yes. Nonfiction.
readers. Very few nonfiction books, but I have never read, and throughout my entire life, ever read a book that was conversational.
Mm.
How did you come up with your writing style, and what made you go, yeah, I can do this?
Last year, this time we had a hurricane called Fran. So I had nothing better to do, and I've always my first book title that I wanted to write was The Catholic Church, and something along that line. But there's so many titles out there, and I was like, nobody's going to go for that. Then I started thinking about, well, Father Jim Garneau is my spiritual director, great guy, great priest, love him to death. Every time I'd have an issue and he and I were talking, he'd say, well, what are you reading? Well, I said, I'm reading on Matthew, or I'm reading John, or I'm reading John again. And he's like, you always go back to those guys, don't you? I said, yeah, I do. And I just thought about that. I was like, I always go back to these guys. And I wanted to have a conversation because, the books that I like reading are conversational. During grad school, I've read so many doggone books, and it's some of them, damn, I'd rather beat my head against the wall than read those books again. Because just the way that they came across, and don't get me wrong, it's important, but it didn't keep my attention, right? I like those books where I can just, like we're doing now, just having that conversation. I think this is enjoyable, right? And now that's what I wanted the reader to have was an enjoyable conversation with me. and just, hey, look, hey, Wally did this. Oh, I've done that. Oh, wow, he did that. Well, I didn't do that, but I did something similar, right? And that way they can relate themselves to the apostles. Because for me, it was a wonderful experience because I really got to know them as people, right? And, Matthew, I mean, he's a tax collector. That was worse than a prostitute. Prostitutes were treated better than tax collectors. I mean, and Jesus says, "Follow me," and he dropped everything. Everything. Can I do that? Can I drop everything and just walk with Christ? Is that what he's asking me to do? Is that what he's asking other people to do? I know people make a living, but the point is, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. Go for it.
It's definitely a hard question to ask yourself, especially this day where you have your taxes to pay, you have your bills to pay, you have your family to take care of. And it's definitely something that I've struggled with on, hey, can I find time to become part of the church? Or why don't I do that? I always seem to find something better or easier or something more enjoyable because
Right.
being a Christian is not always enjoyable.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, I've had a priest and he in the Pennsylvania and he had struggles with some of the aspects of taking care of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big eye opener for me. But that is one thing I think you did a very good job in talking about. And that was a writing style that I'd never seen before. And I think you did a real good job diving into it.
I concur, and I don't say that because you're my dad.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. If people haven't read it yet, if you want to read it, great. Really appreciate it. If you guys would go to Amazon, put a comment down. Even if you didn't like it, that's fine too. I take constructive criticism well sometimes.
Oh yeah.
It'll give him better ideas for his
If
next book.
you decide to read his book, he definitely strongly encourages you to write your honest review, and not you don't have no sugarcoating at all. Whatever you have, Dad can take it. He's got thick skin. I mean, come on, Marine. It takes a lot. So, but I hope those of you watching. I mean, we had a decent crowd. I was pleasantly surprised.
This is our best showing for a live show.
It was.
Wow.
I mean, there was only one person that we knew from the booktube community that came to watch. Louise, I don't know if he's still watching, but thank you, Louise, for joining us too. And Pam and Lisa, Mom, and Casey. She's been quiet if she's been watching. But if anyone else that has watched it, I hope you were able to learn something about the Apostles of Me. And if you are interested, definitely go check it out on Amazon, also on Goodreads if you want to read the full-on blurb on what to expect. And I honestly think it's an enjoyable read for Catholics, non-Catholics, anyone that's interested. And like you said, the writing style is amazing. And you've already heard me talk about my favorite quotes that he did, because there is some humor in there as well. So, but Dad, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
I hope that everybody enjoyed our first installment of Sit Down with the Author, a new video, hopefully, that we can continue on with our channel.
Our next live show is going to be tea time. So,
yes, another new aspect to our channel. But I hope everybody has a great night. I hope everyone that was affected by Hurricane Dorian has a quick recovery. And hopefully it doesn't hurt anybody else.
all right.
All right.
Cheers.
You guys have a good night.
Okay.